Based on some of the responses that I received down in the comments section on yesterday's video regarding Ebola, I thought it might be prudent to do a second video today to sort of clear the air. There are many people who misinterpreted my words, and there are still those who believe that this is fake news. Let me reassure you, it is not fake news. The current outbreak of Ebola in Uganda and other areas of Africa has been going on for months, and they have been trying to contain it very unsuccessfully. And it has moved to different areas, more people, and now there are reports, confirmed reports, out of the UK that someone made it that far. They are currently, and this is a fact, wargaming the arrival of Ebola on our shores at 5 different airports along the east coast of North America. These are facts, and we're going to cover them today. Now, as always, I want to lead off by saying thank you to everyone who's continuing to join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. We will have a video regarding this specific topic over there probably in the next 72 hours, because there are things that can be said over there that we can't say here. Why? We've partnered with Vimeo. It keeps the content off of Google's servers, so we can speak like adults, or Floridians, actually, the way we used to be able to speak in all of North America, but it seems like now it's just restricted to Florida. It's only $1 per month, even less than that if you sign up for an entire year. That means all month long. If you sign up for a whole year, it's like 90 cents. And fully refundable, first 90 days, no questions asked. Now, it's a big deal. It's not covering the headlines because, of course, a lot of people want to talk about holidays and shopping and the new political paradigm in Washington, D.C., and all this other stuff, but it's real. And we have many different outlets globally that are covering this, and there are authorities who are worried about it. Many folks have not thought about the idea of going into the summer months in the southern hemisphere. See, we're going into the winter months in the northern hemisphere. Well, causes major outbreaks of mosquitoes. Now, even here in Florida, it's probably too cool for any real major threat from this, but like I said, there are areas of this country where people are living in some of the most horrific third world conditions you can imagine. Places like Michigan and Minnesota, Washington, New York, all of the northern liberal Democrat states, basically. And mark my words, this could be the death knell of fast food. Because if this would start spreading, that's where it would start. Now, real quick, I showed this yesterday. This was as Ebola outbreak grows in Uganda, U.S. ramps up preparedness plans. I should have read this article yesterday. It might have cleared some things up for you guys, so I'm going to read it today. Uganda has been struggling with an Ebola outbreak for months, and although there have been no suspected or probable Ebola cases identified in the United States, federal and local health officials are working together to prepare for the possibility that the virus will spread across the Atlantic. The U.S. CDC and the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response have conducted tabletop war game exercises with officials from 5 jurisdictions where airline passengers arriving in the U.S. from Uganda are being funneled, the CDC confirmed Monday. Now, real quick, there are no direct flights, meaning non-stop flights, from anywhere in Africa to anywhere in the Western Hemisphere that I can find. Now, there are flights that have connections in Ethiopia and Dakar and other places in Europe, in the Middle East, but they're not direct flights. The agency said the exercises involve plans for managing a suspected case in each jurisdiction under 3 scenarios. When the potential patient is identified at a funneling airport, is identified during state monitoring of returned travelers from Uganda, or seeks care at a hospital. Uganda health authorities declared an outbreak of Ebola virus disease in September, and as of early November, 136 confirmed cases, 21 probable, and 53 confirmed deaths have been identified there. They are closing schools 2 weeks early in Uganda to minimize contact among students and curb the spread of the virus. They have to close by 25 November. 8 students have died from Ebola out of the 23 cases in the schools. The general attitude among public health officials in the U.S. is that and this is the most important part to pay attention to here. The general attitude among public health officials in the U.S. is that as the outbreak in Uganda continues, it raises the likelihood of the virus spreading to the United States. Lori Tremmel Freeman, Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of County and City Health Officials, quote, "It might just be a matter of time." Continuing the quote, "That is why every minute right now is being spent to ramp up the preparedness and response in anticipation of that single event occurring. But the more that we put our time and effort into this stage of the crisis, the better off we'll be when we do get that first case." Notice they don't say if. When we do get that first case. Now that was CNN, 16 November. 17 November, ITV News, Colchester Hospital in England, deep clean. They shut the hospital and scrubbed it top to bottom. Telegraph, possible Ebola case investigated in UK, 17 November 2022. 17 November, Euro Weekly, UK hospital in lockdown after potential deadly Ebola case detected. These aren't scandal rags. This isn't the Inquirer. These are major news outlets. And now, today, quote, CNN, Ebola is real. Uganda to trial vaccines and shut schools early to contain the outbreak. It's not under control. It's not under control. They are doing aggressive contact tracing, but 1 in 5 Ugandans that come to the United States don't even have a cell phone. You see, you look at the way these folks are dressed and what they're looking through, and they're not trying to prevent getting an airborne disease here. They're trying to, allegedly, because allegedly isn't the story that it's not airborne? If it's not airborne, why are these people wearing masks? I mean respirators, masks, not little cloth things that used to sell on whatever. These people in this picture, let's see if I can zoom this in even closer. This guy right here is wearing a respirator. Why in the world, for a disease that you have to come in literal, physical, direct contact with the fluids, would you need a respirator? And oh, by the way, not to toot my own horn too much, but this was this channel a month ago. This is a video from 16 October 2022. A month ago. Ebola alert, brand new highly modified strain, now reemerges, spreading fast across the globe. And I gave the entire Ebola playlist. This was only a month ago I was warning of this. If you think we're having problems now financially, 16,593 for Bitcoin is going to seem really good. It's going to seem really good. And to finish off today's video, before all this broke with Ebola, I had this other tack that I was going to go down with you guys regarding this whole issue with Ebola, with Bitcoin. Bitcoin price may still drop 40% even after this whole FTX nonsense, and why it's continuing to go down. Some said, Florida Mucky, a broken clock is right twice a day. You know, when you predicted that Bitcoin was going to go down, It could only do one of three things. It could have gone up, it could have stayed the same, or gone down. So you got lucky. I mean, you guessed. I'm like, no, I didn't guess. I didn't say that it was just going to go down and buy the dip. I said it was going to go down, it was going to crash completely, and when it got down to a certain level, they were going to stop allowing people to get their money out, which is exactly what happened. And they've continued to shut so many others. Other cryptos other than Bitcoin have done this exact same thing. Now, why? You see, it was the analogy. It was the only analogy that I could find at the time. Bitcoin was taking real currency value out of the actual world economy and sequestering it away and acting like basically a black hole for wealth. You see, world economies need to know how much currency is out there of whatever they're issuing at any one time to be able to maintain its value. Well, this series, Black Sails, talks about New Providence Island, the New World, and this group of pirates and prostitutes that raid this huge ship full of gold, Spanish gold, and then they start converting the gold into other things of value and starting up their own economy. Now, there is a great story, and I'll give you the link to this, from Time. Early American colonists had a cash problem. Here's how they solved it. And they talked about all the different things that they would use as currency, because the problem was that goods coming from England to the New World cost a lot more than they were getting from goods shipped to England. There was a huge trade deficit. And so they just ran out of literal currency. And so there were pieces of 8, and there was wampum, and there was all these different things that fiat currencies. You see, even, let's see if I can find the right picture here. We talk about the gold standard. Even at that time, gold wasn't the gold standard. Because what gold might buy you or might not buy you in the old world, back in Europe, might or might not buy you the same thing in the New World. It would depend on what was needed at the time. The needs of the people in the New World were much greater and much different than the needs of the people back in Europe. And the reason I brought up this picture is during that era, the vast majority of commerce was done by men. You could theoretically have used the idea of one evening with a lady of the night as a currency, as a standard for a wealth of currency. That this is one night spent with one evening, lady of the evening, is equal to X amount pieces of gold. And you could use that as some type of a currency. Now, applied to Great Story Monkey, what does this have to do with us? You could do that right now in North America. People talk about the value of the dollar, the value of things we have to buy, and inflation. You could take the average cost of a home, upper left, and you could say that is one house value, one home value, upper right, 1 month's worth of groceries, one standard automobile, lower left, one standard education. Any one of those things could be used as a standard of value because it's real. And you can't just, like, for example, gold, you can dig gold out of the ground. Well, these things, like in a North American context, like a month's worth of groceries or a house or a car, have real value. And you can average it out. Some cars are, of course, worth more. Some are worth less. Some houses are worth more. But if you could call that a 1, an average, you could then run an entire economy based off of that. Venezuela had something like this that they were trying to do before the U.S. destroyed it. They had something called Plan 50, where you could go to the grocery store and they had these 50 things that they knew that you would need to survive that month. And based on the cost of those 50 things, that's what they determined one average salary to be, one average monthly salary to be. Given that you would spend only so much percentage of your monthly income on food, they would say, okay, since that's the percentage, here's what the minimum wage is. So wages continually, instead of prices fluctuating, and this is really what I'm getting at, instead of prices fluctuating of cars or houses or groceries or education, wages fluctuated. So there was no such thing as inflation. Meaning they would continually keep a running cost of a running tally of what things cost. And when supplies went up and down and prices went up and down, so did your pay. That was kind of the neat idea that they had down in Venezuela. Now, it only worked on a small scale because you have so many different people doing so many different things. To establish what one's salary is very, very difficult. With a place like Venezuela, since their primary source of income wasn't taxes, it was oil. Had they been left alone by Washington, D.C., it would have worked out fantastically. I mean, imagine never having to worry about, groceries going up or down, car payments going up or down, housing, with interest rates going way up and way down, all this. Imagine never having to worry about that. If things got cheaper, well, your wages would go down to reflect that. Things got more expensive, your wages would go up. What it was in actual dollars in your paycheck wouldn't really matter. Because whatever percentage, let's say, for example, your house payment was a quarter of your monthly income, it would always be a quarter. Because if the house price went up, so would your wage to reflect that. So you would always have that 25% go onto the house. Same thing with all the other things. And that was kind of the idea. It's a little bit more difficult in a complex place like the United States, Florida specifically, because of all of the tipping and all of the different types of service industries where it would be very, very difficult to try to keep everybody on an even playing field. And some have said, is that the job of government or not? Well, our government's trying to do that anyway with subsidies. It's just kind of a baked-in thing. And I know this gets really off into the weeds of economics. But something out of nowhere, like, for example, an Ebola, can throw a huge whammy into capitalist places like Florida. You see, it'll affect Ebola, will affect Florida way, way worse than it'll affect a lot of other places. Because we need people coming to Florida and spending their money and doing the whole vacation tourist thing. Something like that's going around, especially in the wintertime. That's the busy time. That's when the huge crush of snowbirds come south because of the weather. But if something like this would throw everything into lockdown, that'd be a problem. And there'd be a lot of folks out there kind of wishing and hoping for, standard incomes, standard, things where they wouldn't have to worry about where's this extra money going to come from. Because everything they needed, like their house or their car or their groceries, all of that the price would reflect whatever the current cost was. So, anyway, I will leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.